Greetings, welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. I am deeply honored. I have invited, or rather begged, Dr. John Wise to join us. He has been otherwise known as the Christian Atheist. He just has the most incredible Christian testimony. It just stands out, not only a Christian testimony, but a young earth creationist testimony. So, may I call you John? I
Of
feel like
course.
I want to call you Dr. Wise, but how do
No,
you
don't
like
call me
to?
Dr. Wise.
Uh, if you could, for the next, if you could summarize in 5 minutes a little bit of your journey and who you are to people who probably never heard of you. I think you have just the most compelling story.
Uh, yeah, sure. So I'm not sure where to pick up and where to start. I grew up in a Christian home, went to Bible college to become a pastor, and within about a year and a half after graduating from Bible college, I was pretty much on the ropes with my faith. I felt like I was doing more performance than really believing the Christian message, and so I would have called myself at that point an agnostic. So I had gone to Lancaster Bible College and graduated in 1990. Um, and then I started a PhD sorry, no, well, let me just jump forward to the PhD program at University of California, Irvine. There were some other things intervening in between, but this would have been about 1995. And I was working on a PhD in philosophy because I thought, what good is it going to be for me to go into ministry as an agnostic? Not a good position to be in as a pastor. So I pursued philosophy, which was a passion for me, along with science. And about a year into the program, I was walking across campus one day and I said to myself, you know what? Agnosticism. I remember reading in C.S. Lewis that it's kind of agnosticism is kind of a cowardly move. And where I got that from was The Magician's Nephew, right? If you're just standing at the edge of the pool, you're not jumping in and you're not taking a stand. And so I thought that's cowardly. And so I said, I've tried the Christian way. It doesn't seem to work for me. I give up. I'm an atheist. And for the next 25 years, that was the position that I adopted. And so I worked all the way through my PhD, got my PhD in 2004, and began teaching at East Stroudsburg University of Pennsylvania and online at the time as well. And when I look back now, in 2019, I'll tip my hand. In 2019, I came back to the Lord Jesus through some interesting circumstances. But when I look back now over those 25 years of atheism, I see the Lord's hand at work every step along the way. Because I was teaching at East Stroudsburg University Intro to Philosophy almost exclusively. And so I would teach 4 to 5 classes of Intro to Philosophy, which really, for me, built entirely on Plato and the early pre-Socratics and Socrates, and moved forward a little bit through the rest of history. But most of the time, I stuck in Plato. And everywhere I turned in Plato, I saw Jesus. And so the entire theistic um, message was being given to me as I moved forward teaching philosophy over the next however many years. It was till 2013 that I was at East Stroudsburg. Um, and so eventually, my first wife got very sick with a condition called Lewy body dementia. And I was no longer teaching at East Stroudsburg University. I became an auto mechanic and worked there, plus teaching online. Um, my wife died in 2019, and in the meantime, my wife and I were actually going to church. I met her in Lancaster Bible College, my first wife, and so we were attending a local church. And around 2015, my wife was so bad she was institutionalized, and so I just continued to go to church because we had an adopted child, and I promised my wife I would keep her in the church. And so we were going to church, and there was another woman there whose husband was had cancer and was in a bad way. And I helped her a little bit with some things that were, she needed work with in her house and on her cars and things like that. And then about 2018, he died. And so we were kind of, texting buddies, talking about the things that were going on in our lives and how, she helped me through some of the rough parts. And so we became pretty good texting friends. That's all it was. Um, but when my wife died in 2019, I reached a crisis in my faith because I call atheism a faith. I was really believing that atheism was correct. The problem was through that entire time where I was teaching philosophy up through 2019, the utter and absolute collapse of the atheistic worldview was evident to me. And so I had in front of me in 2019 these two paths. I knew what atheism was. I'd plumbed it to its depths. I knew where it took you, and I knew it took you nowhere. It took you to absolute, unanchored, a reality that's completely unanchored. You can't justifiably do science. You can't even do philosophy because if you don't have something that anchors the world and makes it real, you've got absolute relativism. And to me, that was nothing. The problem was, as many Christians would talk to me along the way, I would say to them, look, I see the value of the Christian life. I see the value inherent in it. I see that it anchors everything. The problem is, I threw the switch. I don't know how to throw it back. Well, my current wife, Jennifer, whom we married, and that was the woman I was texting with, was instrumental in this all coming about, my faith coming back. Um, and at one point, we had our children at the local pool, and we were talking with one another while the kids were swimming. And I said to her, well, she was, complaining, but not complaining. I shouldn't say that. Jenny never complains. She was lamenting some of the things in life that were problematic. And I said, well, you should just marry me. And I meant it, of course, because over the years I had come to really, really appreciate Jenny. And I'd look around and think to myself, if I'm going to marry anyone, I would want to marry her, but that's not possible. Because as a former Christian, in my mind, thinking to myself, I'm a former Christian, I know what the rules are. You don't get unequally yoked. And she said, you know what? She looked at me. She said, you know what, John, if you were a Christian, I would pack the van tomorrow and we would go away and get married. And suddenly my world collapsed around me because what I felt that I had done is I had offered her a pathway that was forbidden to her. And now I was responsible for that. And so I went through a crisis of my atheist faith. And that weekend, I actually went to New York to camp with my niece. And she and her husband are very strong Christians. And so I'm sitting there pouring out my heart to them. And my niece looked at me and said, what's your problem? She said, you've come this far. You see the absolute death that is inherent in the atheist worldview. You see the value of the Christian worldview. So why don't you just give your life back to God? Well, that sounds too easy. And it didn't happen right away. But as we drove back from New York, I reached my driveway and pulled in, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot, God. I don't even know what to believe anymore. I'll give it a shot, and we'll go from there. I said, if you can use me, I'm yours. And so I, I guess this is what I tell people. If you go to the Christian Atheist podcast or to my book, you'll get this in greater detail. But really, it came down to a weighing of values because the atheist worldview gave me nothing of value. It was utterly and completely empty. And I knew it as such because I had followed the logic of it. I'm a philosopher. I understand where logic takes you. I understand that when you take a certain position, there are certain things that go along with that, whether you know them or not. And I don't know any atheists, and I literally mean this. I don't know of any atheists other than like Nietzsche, or not even Sartre, because Jean-Paul Sartre eventually came back to a theistic view at the end of his life. But there are almost no atheists that I know of who are willing to follow the logic of their position. I did, and I knew it was empty. So it came down to me like a choice between, wait a second, John, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been deceiving yourself? Here you have value. Here you have no value. Here you have value. And I mean, Jenny, I can just turn around and we can start a new life together. And so I did. And I have never looked back since. And I don't know if you want me to go from there to the
Oh,
young earth position.
well,
That's up to you.
we'll cover that a little bit. Let's take uh, probably because so much of your journey is so compelling. I'd probably beg you to come back and talk more. And we had kind of an agenda that I put forward for this meeting, and so the answer is I would love you to talk more about this. I would, but there are other urgent matters. I do want to apologize to the audience and to you. I didn't turn off my phone and it rang right in the middle of, I
I
felt
didn't even
so
hear
bad. I'm glad you didn't hear it.
it.
So, uh, so just consider that I'm begging you to come back, and maybe in the course of even this show, we can cover the young Earth creationism more. And it would be a nice, maybe in the material that we talk about intervening will be a nice segue into your journey to being a young Earth creationist. I don't know how long do you have for this meeting? This is so good.
However long you want. I've got some things to do today, but they can, they're holding off. I've got some grading to do, but I can do that tomorrow if I need to.
Well, you know what? This is also a good afternoon for me. And my YouTube viewers, a lot of them are casual viewers because people are busy. They'll turn on these shows and they'll just let it play as if they're listening to a talk show. And there are some famous talk shows like Rush Limbaugh that go on for 3 hours a day, and people would just tune in just to hear conversation. So I actually enjoy that a lot, actually too much. And I had to kind of discipline myself and say, look, you need a life more than just hosting talk shows. I actually one time did an entire monologue for 5 hours. I was having so much fun. Now I totally bored the audience with all I actually was spouting molecular biology and protein biology from heart 5 hours. And like, that's kind of scary that I could talk about this stuff for 5 hours straight and and still want to keep talking about it. And it's like, okay. And that actually does lead to the conversation why I reached out to John. I said, he's a professor. I am trying to create a college level course. So now the viewers may know this already, but for the newcomers, let me just introduce you to a little bit. Again, this is for the newcomers. There are a lot of people that already know me. I'm a molecular biophysics researcher, and I have some side businesses sustaining me while I'm in semi-retirement. I had been a engineer in the aerospace and defense industry, and part of being an engineer is being a student of physics. You're actually a lifelong student of physics. So I actually have a degree in applied physics from Johns Hopkins University, a master's degree. I studied general relativity, quantum mechanics, plasma physics, solid state physics, statistical mechanics, a lot of painful that I'd say when I took classical mechanics, I've been permanently traumatized by that class. That was the most insanely difficult class I ever took. And I'm still recovering from that. It was so it was so traumatizing. Um, and uh, my mother, my dad passed away in 2003, and I was deeply motivated just to care for her. There are some people that can keep a job down and also care for an ailing loved one. I just was not wired for that. And so I left a very prestigious job for a very prestigious firm, Massachusetts Institute of Technology Research and Engineering, locally here. They're actually a spinoff. The acronym is MITRE, and some people say, well, that's Massachusetts Institute of Technology Rejected Engineers. And it's like, okay, I'll take that too. And it's a $500 million federally, it's probably now $1 billion a year federally funded research center. And I was in the aviation. Before that, I was in the Defense Department. And I had no aspiration of doing creationism. I had a crisis of faith in 2000, 2001, nearly left the faith. I said, look, um, everything in my scientific training demands experimental facts that we could observe. I don't have to directly see it, but can you at least give me something? And my dad was dying. And I just like, well, being in the Defense Department, I naively thought, oh my, help if I help the US government build better weapons, we can eliminate all the bad guys off the planet. And after a while, I began to realize, no, that's not going to work. And I began to be horrified about where the world could go. I began to see, as I got acquainted with human nature more, kind of that idealistic viewpoint of black and white, we're the good guys, everyone else is the bad guys, that started to fall apart. And I wrestled with faith. Um, and I'm just like, I just don't, I don't have the evidential, I don't feel like I'm getting the evidential level that I need to sustain me in this. I said, I don't think I could be an atheist. Many times I would legitimately say, I don't know. There are arguments for and against. Um, and it's really interesting when you said throw the switch. Ironically, when I started dabbling in professional gambling, you definitely throw the switch. It's like, yeah, you're dealing with uncertainty all the time. I actually got into that because we learned it in math in math classes how to beat the casinos. And and after Dad died, I sort of needed an escape, and it was a really interesting path. It's like, you can commit to a course of action without having all the facts. In fact, in war, there's a saying in the movie, oh my goodness, it was the one that starred George Peppard, and it was about the V2 rockets, Operation Crossbow. And there's a saying there. It said, if you wait till you uh, I'm not going to quote this act correctly, but I'll quote it in terms of the spirit of, if you wait until in war, if you wait till you have all the facts, you've waited too long.
Mhm.
And in I began to see this principle play out in business, in decisions, very major decisions in terms of people's lives. You could wait till you have all the facts, but if the patient's dying, you've got to try to act. You There's a chance you're going to be wrong, but if you wait, you're guaranteed to be wrong.
Yeah, that's the trap of agnosticism. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about. If you're going to put off indefinitely the decision, then you've already lost. So that was for me the trap of it. And as bad as it was to pull it and go towards atheism, it was better than remaining an agnostic
Wow,
because it took me somewhere.
wow. See, that's it's very powerful. And then playing blackjack, professional level, the reason I'm not doing this rather than that, they kicked me out of the casinos. They put me on the Surveillance Information Network. The acronym is SIN, SIN. It's just so funny, a Christian on the SIN network. I'm on the I'm in the credits of the movie The Holy Rollers. the story of card counting Christians who took the casinos for millions. It's a funny, compelling story. But I learned a lot of spiritual principles and also intelligent design principles because probability is always facing you in the face. It's like, how do you make decisions? How do you make scientific claims when you don't have all the facts? And I'm just like, wow, this is really cool. And then so hedge fund managers, this is pervasive. There's that passage in the Old Testament where the lepers were saying, well, look, if we just sit here all day, we're going to die. Now, if we go to the camp of the enemy, we may die, but we have a chance of living. So obviously, you take the bet that at least has something that might have a positive net value versus zero. And that really began to hit me in the process of the studying of professional level gambling. Now, I really don't consider myself ever been a professional, but I was at that skill level until they kicked me out. So it was very disturbing to know my photo was circulated all over the nation. So I go to one casino, drive 300 miles away. Oh, hi, Mr. Cordova. I'm just like, oh, it got me. Um, and I have videos on this. It was
You've
really
got quite a
fun.
compelling story yourself, Sal. I haven't heard any of this before.
Oh, well, okay. Well, all right. Since you're here, I'll fill you in since we're sharing kind of all our fun stories. Um, I point the viewers to Pimped Up Casino Sharks. Part two, you'll hear about my mentor, math professor Michael Conjar. He was a professor at a Catholic university, um, Detroit Mercy. Oh yeah. So,
So I was getting a drink of water. My wife just brought me a drink of
well,
water.
hi, Jenny. Uh, tell Jenny hi.
Yep. She said, "Hi, how are you?"
Oh, great. Oh, thank you. Um, so he was teaching the Catholic college and he recruited a nun to be part of his professional gambling. It's so funny. Now there is a story of a Catholic priest, Joseph Fahey, who had a vow of poverty because he's a Catholic priest. He won tons of money in blackjack. He donated to charity. So you get some really very colorful stories uh, in this. And there was just, I was surprised there was there's a noticeable segment who are Christians, and they're very effective because they play by the book. I said, yeah, that's very kind of a Christian thing. You play by the book. You don't actually gamble. You have these rules that they're mathematical rules, how to play your hands, and they're just if they do it faithfully by the book, do it, if I may say, religiously, you're successful. And so they took the casinos for millions. Dr. Kanjar and I, before we got kicked out, took the casinos for probably took one particular casino in Turtle Creek. It's called Turtle Creek Casino in Grand Traverse, Michigan. We took them for 65,000 before we got kicked out. And now the way they kicked me out is security arrested me and detained me, and they said, "Okay, your fate will be determined by the tribal elders." They eventually released me. So okay, that's a little drama in my life, but just okay, that's a total aside. But this whole thing of it being agnostic, it's like you might be agnostic in kind of thought, but you can't be in action. You
No, you
cannot
can't.
be. You
Yep.
could say, I'm not 100% sure that this is right, but I am 100% sure this is the best bet I could take now, given the information I have. Because
Yep.
you cannot be agnostic in the way you live your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Just
that
like it's
fair?
impossible to live without faith. You can't do it. I mean, that's my biggest argument with atheists. They say, "Oh, I don't believe in faith." What? You can't live your life without faith because nothing is certain. You've got to move forward. You've got to make your choices, and the entire world that you build is based on where you start, and you make choices about that. So,
Yeah, something as
you're living
simple
in a
as like,
faith-based world.
right, something as simple as you're assuming you're going to be alive tomorrow to make that appearance to talk about atheism. That's a, I mean, really, there are, it's reasonable, but as Bertrand Russell, will the sun rise tomorrow? And as we studied physics, there'll be a day that doesn't really happen. It won't be the sun, it might not be any life. I mean, it starts to like, okay, affect you. It's like, okay, how much can we extrapolate what we understand? Uh, Not very far is the answer. Uh,
Yep.
in the formal sense, but we can still take an educated guess, and we will certainly make decisions with incomplete knowledge. And I said, okay, how's that different from anything else we do?
Mhm.
And that really changed my outlooks. So this has been a total aside, but anyway, I was recovering from all of this, and I said, I just don't. I had bouts of agnosticism, and I said I'd like to believe. People prayed for me. It says in James 5:16, confess your faults before one another so that you may be healed. It also
Yep.
says in James chapter 1, if you do not have faith, don't expect God to answer your prayers. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to expect God to answer my prayers because I don't have faith right now. But I realized 3 chapters later, he gave the loophole. You can find someone who does have faith and whom God will listen to. And so I just confessed and I said, you can help me build my faith because God's not going to hear my prayers. He might, I believe he'll hear yours. And that's when I got into intelligent design. I said, I doubt the Bible. I doubt all sorts of things. I don't need 100% certainty. What brought it to a head was I was seeing these missionaries go to Islamic nations that would kill them for their missionary work. And I said, okay, it's one thing for me to believe just, and it just affects my life. But if I'm encouraging others to do something that would imperil their lives and they just kind of waste it for nothing, that would bother me. And I said, I really, really want to I really want to do this just to know that I have at least a reasonable argument why they should give up their lives because I don't want to be party to something that is causing them to die needlessly. I would have, there was, that was when Heather Mercer was arrested by the Taliban and sentenced to death in Afghanistan. And our prayer group here in the Northern Virginia area where she was from, McLean Bible Church and another church she is affiliated with, every week, please pray for our, you know, the member of our church, Heather Mercer. At the time, that was McLean Bible. And I'm like, God, it'll be a miracle if she's rescued. Those people are so evil. Well, 9/11 happened. George Bush invaded Afghanistan and the Army Rangers rescued her miraculously. I'm like, okay. Uh, and it was during that time also I started to gather all the facts. I said, okay, Lord, I have no idea where to even begin. I'm just going to start with my knowledge of physics. At the time, I had 3 science degrees. And I started looking at the origin of life. And I'm just like, oh.
That'll do it.
And when I saw atheists and agnostics, Fred Hoyle in particular, saying that the odds are just so remote. And it's taken a long time for me to make this very succinct. The argument is very simple. There are far more ways to break than to make. An engineer totally knows that. A car mechanic knows that. And it's like that totally applies to something even far more complex
Yep.
as the cell. I said, okay, that's just natural odds. This will not, and I began to form, the last 20 years has been formalizing this, looking at the literature and say, okay, even the fundamental theorem of calculus, it was accepted for 200 years, but it was never codified to the level where you know, the high tier of mathematicians until the 19th century with Riemann said, okay, we're going to do this very rigorously. And he came up with a fundamental theorem of calculus. The proof for it, the fundamental theorem was always there, but he had a proof that still stands to this day. It's like, okay, this is at least as good as any foundation of mathematics. If you're going to accept certain axioms, it's like, well, you can imply this. And the last 20 years has been trying to make more rigorous and intuitive argument. But I've actually come full circle. How could I express this to the average person? Many ways to break, far more ways to break than to make. And so my faith was healed. And I said, you know what? I want to thank God. I made a promise to God. I said, if I get healed, I'll spend 1 year promoting intelligent design, 1 year of my life. Then I'm going to go off and become a hedge fund manager because I met a lot of professional gamblers that became hedge fund managers and being on Wall Street. I said, I think that's going to be a fun path. God had other plans for me. And then I ended up taking care of my widowed and disabled mother for 18 years.
Ooh.
And I got a job with John Sanford. But I do remember I said the first thing I'll do to follow through with, offering thanks to God was in 2004. I said, God, I'll start an intelligent design group at George Mason University, my undergrad alma mater. And I said, I don't know. When I was signing the paperwork with my fellow student Christy, and we were just praying as we were about to submit the paperwork. I said, God, this is just, I don't know why, but what we're doing here on George Mason, I mean, no one knows about us. Just bless our group. But it'd be really nice if we get national attention for our work here. Just came out of my mouth. I don't know what motivated me to say that as we prayed. It wasn't but like 6 weeks later, I get a email from Casey Luskin and said, there's a reporter from Nature who wants to talk to you. How did they even know that I exist? And why would they want to talk to me? So did you see
From
the movie
Nature, the
Expelled?
journal Nature?
Yes.
Okay.
If you saw the movie Expelled, George Mason was the epicenter of a lot of intelligent design, and I later found out also creationism. And the Nature reporter. So for those who are unfamiliar with this story, I'm going to share it. Other people are sick of hearing it, but oh well. This is for those who are uninitiated. Um, Let me increase the size of this. Let's see if I could actually, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to try to get this better presented through my PowerPoint. If you had some words to say while I get this set up, please.
Now you put me on a spot.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is why it's nice to have a co-host like you.
I was thinking, now I have to find out my way back to it. You said something um, earlier. Oh yeah, about the cell. And so if I were to trace my turn from an um, a theistic evolutionist, which I was when I turned back to Christ in 2019 for the next 5 years. It wasn't until 2024 that I made the change to young earth creationism. And it was basically because of your specialty. Jenny and I began to look together. Jenny was actually getting very uncomfortable with the work I was doing on the Christian atheist. And she was getting ready to like say, I can't keep doing this because I think you're leading people down the wrong path. You're not staying close enough. But she wasn't pushing, she was not, she was just like worried and she was talking to God. And we were studying biology together and cellular biology, and I had no idea of the last of the advances in cellular biology over the last 20 years. And when we began to look at them, boom, Darwinism crashed. It just crashed. It's exactly like you're talking about the statistical likelihood. It's like, no way. You might be able to get a little bit of plausibility back when Darwin thought there was this very simple plasma in a membrane that could modify and do this and do that. The cell is designed not to change. And the whole thing just crashed around it. The next thing I had a hard time giving up was after Darwin crashed for me was long ages, but it didn't last long because eventually it's like, okay, God, if I'm going to be in, I'm going to be all in, and I'm just going to accept the Bible from start to finish. And once that happened, it's like He gave me evidence that is just beyond what I ever thought was possible. For me, young Earth creation was just a joke. I mean,
Was for me too.
it's
Yeah.
I would say, oh, Ken Ham. I labeled every young Earth creationist argument Ken Ham, and it just dismissed it. And now that I'm on this side, I look back and I realize that's the only argument they have. They've got no good argument to come back. They lose on the science. But if you can just dismiss it without engaging it, that works pretty well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, just for the record, for those who know me, they actually think I'm not a young Earth creationist because I've actually been extremely critical of young Earth arguments. I'm just like, look, I'm on your side, but I don't think that carries the day. And there are still some areas in my specialties. I'm just like, well, look, I have people like Dr. David Snoke, who I admire. He's a professor of physics and astronomy. And little brief announcement, God willing, April 16th, 17th. It's like a Friday, Saturday. I may have the date slightly off. I am planning to visit Dr. Snow as he's speaking at University of Pittsburgh, where he's a distinguished professor of physics and astronomy. And so there are things in young Earth creationism. It's like, God, I'm going to have to rely on you because it's not quite the slam dunk I have with Origin of Life. I could take any university professor and say, look, you're wrong, and you don't even have to rely on what I said. Look at James Tour, look at Richard Smalley, Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Why don't we go down their line of reasoning while, why Origin of Life will fail? I don't have that slam dunk when I would discuss with David Snoke. Now, David Snoke is actually, I'm going to try to get a statement from him is that do you support intelligent design, which I think he does. He published with Michael Behe and on a paper that was in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial. I think he'll say yes, but it'd be nice to have a quotation from him. So I view him as on our side generally. And I was a evolutionist that didn't, after I became a Christian, that didn't last long. Became an old Earth creationist. Still, about half my life was being an old Earth creationist. And John Sanford, who I worked for after I left my job at MITRE, um, he was like you, theistic evolutionist, then believed in intelligent design after reading Michael Behe's book. He said, "Wow, I never even heard that viewpoint." And you would think a genetic engineer would kind of have some intuition. It's like, gee, we wouldn't need genetic engineers if natural selection could do all this for us. He became a genetic engineer because, gee, if you want to build new features, you need intelligent design. Um, so I mean, God was putting him in the right spot. It's like that's kind of the right mindset. You want a new feature, you need intelligent design. Um, and then he became an old Earth creationist, and it was a 10-year, for him, it was a 10-year journey. He became from Christian to young Earth creationist. And even after he was a young Earth creationist, he said, Sal, there are a few things that would make me go back. And I was working as a research assistant from him. This is 2016, and I think I could share this because all of this is now, it's all moot. He said, Sal, those ALU elements, there are all these repetitive elements in the genome, and the evolutions have got us on that. I don't know what to do with that. So that's your next assignment, Sal. You're going to figure this out. I'm just like, thanks, boss.
Have you read the Al-Masala paper?
No.
Oh my, you should read that.
Well, there's so many. Well,
Yeah.
but it was just a providence because just the year earlier, the paper that I needed to get was finally published. And then since then, and they said these repetitive elements are are some of the most sophisticated computational things in biology. The thing that we thought was junk, it's like this is the crown jewel. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? If you looked at a server farm, you'll see all the computers identical. No engineer in his right mind would say this is junk because they're all identical.
Mhm.
You just haven't figured out. If you didn't know the function, you might be tempted to say that. If you're an evolutionary biologist, you'd be driven to say it.
Exactly.
you'd be driven to say it without the facts. And I learned why, because they know if you pass a certain level of complexity and functionality, evolutionary theory is wrong. They have said so. That's the red line you won't cross. If the facts cross this, then the facts are wrong, is their
Yeah.
viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I passed that on to John. He said, wow, wow. And I said, yeah, I said, wow, too. I said, I didn't think I can't take credit for this. It's to God be the glory that we have all this science that can actually discover this. Because I said, John, if I had come on board a little earlier, I would have been totally useless to you. God's timing was right, at least as far as this question. He had me working on so many other projects, but this one is like the timing was perfect. When he assigned this project, the data had just come out. And like, thank God. So, um, anyway, we're just sharing our journeys here. So now that gave me time to queue up what I wanted to share. So, I hope the audience, I hope guys, I hope you're really enjoying this banter here because I think John and I are certainly having lots of fun with it. So, goodness, this is okay. All right. So I'm going to share and I'm just going to verify that you can see my screen. You'll see it's a feature, April 28th. Do you see that, John?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the cover of the prestigious scientific journal Nature, April 28th, 2005. And I will point the newcomers. This is God has such a sense of humor. Do you see what it says there? This journal contains material on evolution. Evolution by natural selection is a theory, not a fact. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully, and critically considered. Now, God has a sense of humor. The editors posted this. They were trying to mock Cobb County, who had a similar sticker in their public school textbooks, and that caused a furor, an uproar. So they kind of mimicked that, expecting people would get the joke. Well, it probably made sense way back in 2005, but now people have forgotten the origin of that. And so now on the number one journal, they have this evolution by natural selection is a theory, not a fact. And this was the story, this cover story. I ended up being on the cover story because this was, the question is intelligent design coming to your campus? And so that's how I got on the cover of Nature. They wanted to find out, you know, uh, who are all these conspirators trying to overthrow evolutionary theory? And it really wasn't because, I don't know, for some reason they thought I was an interesting character. I really had no credentials to speak of then, not that I have any now, but it was Carolyn Crocker. Let me see what the next slide is. Carolyn, uh, I don't have it. It was Carolyn Crocker who was she was a professor there of cellular biology, and she mentioned intelligent design in passing. Now she had a student that was flunking her class, and he found an opportunity now to get rid of her. So he reported her to the authorities, so to speak, and said she's teaching intelligent design, and they pulled her out of the class immediately. Couldn't even finish the semester. Yeah. A lawsuit. She filed a lawsuit, and it just turned out the law firm that she had hired also had a commercial contract where they're serving George Mason. And so the law firm fired her attorney, and he was out of a job. So they played real hardball. I mean, this was a pretty nasty game. I saw this and my jaw was dropping. I said, look, um, I don't think she tested anyone on this. She was probably just speaking off the cuff. It wasn't material that I don't know how much she required anyone to, that they were graded. I don't think she would dock points. She would ask them, she would confront people. But in any case, they were in a furor over that. And that's what got a lot of attention to the story. What the what I didn't know at the time, and I don't think the reporter knew, George Mason had awarded three PhDs to creationists, three PhDs in biology to creationists. I'll name them. They're out in the open. Gordon Wilson, Timothy Standish, Timothy Brophy. There was one biology student who got his PhD in education. He got his undergrad in biology at Mason. He got his PhD in education, science education, I think, University of Virginia. That's Charles Jackson. There was a professor, David McQueen, of geology, who was a young Earth creationist. And it's like, okay, so, and then you got, last but not least, yours truly. And like, yeah, this is an epicenter. So if you have anything to comment on, I'm going to move uh, through some slides here.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'll go back to the slideshow.
Yeah, I've got nothing.
Okay,
I'm
so
just listening in rapt attention. So,
wow. Okay, well, you help bail me out sometimes. Otherwise, I'll have this uncomfortable silence. So I found something more here. Um, I'll show you some pictures. So we had Carolyn Crocker. We were mentioned. All of these. The usual suspects were mentioned in this Nature article, Stephen Meyer, and of course there's Carolyn Crocker, professor, and there's Casey Luskin. So all of us were mentioned. So the gang was mentioned. It's like the 21-year anniversary of this coming out. These things were noticed by Ben Stein, who was deeply troubled by Darwinian evolution because he attributed that as contributing to the Holocaust. He's Jewish. And he felt it very important to stand up for intelligent design because he didn't like where this would lead to culturally. The idea of, he felt this would lead to eugenics if you take this to its conclusion. And so, we were wondering how come someone as mainstream as Ben Stein, who's probably not a creationist, wanted to weigh in on this. Definitely not a young Earth creationist. And from what I have learned, as best as I can gather, this was what motivated him. It motivated him. The Holocaust motivated him to do this, and he sees that Darwinian evolution and that mindset is going to lead us down a similar path. And so he had this movie in 2008. It was a motion picture, Expelled. Ben Stein, 2008, and there was featured Carolyn Crocker. So, and that's not the end of the story, and I'll get to why I begged you to come on to this show. So God answered my prayer. Not only did I get national attention, I got international attention. And it is, people have thought, okay, so this came out in 2005 in April 28th. Later that year, December, it was the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial. And the decision was intelligent design's false. It will not be taught in the Dover district.
right.
Now, that being said, it doesn't make a ruling for the rest of the country. It's only that district. And
Mhm.
everyone was predicting intelligent design would die because it was just a plot to insert intelligent design into um, public
To insert
schools.
religion into schools. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And so that was the premise. And so I guess I don't know that they were totally shocked, but the intelligent design movement didn't die. And the irony, oh, now I have, I'll bring up another slide here shortly. The irony was that it continued at the university level. It continued at the university level, and people were still arguing it. So why didn't you give up? You lost your ploy to insert this in the public schools, and you say all these guys exploring this. And at the time, I'm really seeing the fruition of this. I'm seeing now, I mean, people who are following my blog. And I was still a nobody. I was a nobody then. I'm still a nobody, but I had blogs. where I talk about some of my off the cuff ideas. I didn't know who was paying attention. Some of them are now university professors who believe in intelligent design. One of them's a CEO of a biomedical company. I'm like, whoa. Had I known that this was my audience, I think I would have been more careful with my words. They've come up and thanked me. And I mean, they've surpassed me in all dimensions. I was just a total misfit, but I was like, wow. And I've seen this as I've tracked what's happening. I go to these conferences now. I meet people. The audience are full of university professors that are pro ID and researchers in industry. It used to be just like, oh, you're trying to convert church people. I go to some of these conferences. I'm just like, they'll give me their card and just like, oh yeah, I'm chairman of this department or I'm professor in this and I'm a researcher. I'm just like, whoa. So this is the change that has happened.
Mhm.
And what had happened in this is a God thing. Um, Even before I knew I was going to be in the nature publication, I started, or maybe around the same time, possibly concurrently, I started doing a poll. I said, "What if intelligent?" I said, "Can we? What's the probability that people would be interested in intelligent design and creationism if it were taught as a college course?" I had no idea. I said I could sense that it'd be big. So I did an informal poll. I hired an atheist organization, the Freethinkers of James Madison University, to do it on their campus. And I think our sample size was 300. Uh, and we asked this question, for your general electives or whatever electives, would you be interested in taking a course on intelligent design, creationism, or both? 75% said yes. 75% said yes. And I'm like, oh my
This was
goodness.
at George Mason,
James Madison University.
James
Now it
Madison.
was,
Okay.
I think there was a slight error in the reporting that they said George Mason, because I was based in George Mason, but I actually conducted the poll at James Madison.
Okay.
And 75%. I said, even if we're off by a factor of 10, that's 7.5% of the student population. For a campus of 20,000 people, that's going to be 1,500 students. I said, do you know you'll probably not have enough. You'll have you'll not have enough classes taught. You won't have the staff to manage. It's going to be so big. And I learned the hard way. I said, maybe I could pitch this not as a matter of you know, whether it's right or wrong, but how about for profit? If you just want to have the debate on campus and have these classes and you could actually have the controversy, I said, do you know you're going to attract so many students? And it went nowhere.
Mm.
One professor, and I think I've since forgotten his name, but God bless him. I said, I had a conversation with him. I said, this would be nice if we could teach this here. And that's as far as it got, but I gave him two videos, Privileged Planet and Unlocking the Mystery of Life, which were developed in partnership with the Discovery Institute, but more with Illustra Media. He started showing them in his religion classes. I'm like, okay, we have a little beachhead here.
Mm.
And I started distributing this. I said, okay, this is really cool, but we need to develop this. And so that has been my long standing dream. And I feel that that is my calling. And I have let me see if I can get this. Have you heard of the NCSE,
Mm-mm.
National Center for Selling Evolution? Wait, it's National Center for Science Education. Among people on our side, we call it the National Center for Selling Evolution because they were the ones involved in Kitzmiller versus Dover, among other parties interested. They're the ones who helped get Richard Sternberg, evolutionary biologist, fired. That led to a big congressional investigation. I don't know if you're familiar with that controversy. So the NCSE used to play a big role in all of this.
Mhm.
So, okay, so why don't I acquaint you with the NCSE? So during the big public education fights over teaching evolution in public schools, it was this. And they've been around since like at least the mid 80s,
Okay.
probably earlier. They were fighting this. So let me just share my screen here. So this is the National Center for Selling Evolution. I'm sorry. Um, NCSE, and let me see. Um, okay, millions of students don't get an accurate science education. And so uh, science teachers recognize that evolution and climate change are widely misunderstood or rejected in many places. Teaching these topics without specific training is challenging. Many teachers avoid these well-established yet culturally controversial areas of science to avoid conflict. Okay. Oh, hang on. I didn't mean. I apologize. So this is the screen, the NCSE, National
Okay.
Center for Science Education, which we call the National Center for Selling Evolution. And so this is kind of their mini mission statement. And the interesting point is that the former when she was president of the NCSE, we had a correspondence because in that Nature article, they also interviewed me. They interviewed Carolyn Crocker. They interviewed Eugenie Scott
Yeah.
of the NCSE, and she said it shocked me. She said, "Well, I'm against teaching evolution in public schools, but universities are the place, their universities are the place to teach creationism." Oh, I'm sorry. She was saying, I'm against teaching creationism in public schools. That should be safe for university. And I'm like, so you're fighting us at the public school, but you're okay with it at the university level. So I wrote to her and I said, can you clarify? I couldn't believe what I was reading,
Yeah.
and you may have been misquoted, or maybe because it wasn't a direct quote or something that I saw. I said, I just want to get this straight. So why don't I read this? Because we got a blessing. Eyes popped out. I said, I did not expect this. So one can find this, and I can provide links to the people in the video description to this exchange. And I have permission to publish her letter, and that's Eugenie Scott.
Mhm.
And I said, Dr. Scott, I'm Salvador Cordova. I was featured in the April 28th, 2005 article in Nature. Our idea chapters have been exploring getting ID into the universities. Though I'm well aware of NCSE's position regarding ID in the public schools, I was very surprised to see, I was very surprised at how Jeff Brumfield characterized your position regarding ID in the universities. Something the article attributed to you did not come with a verbatim quote from you, and I was hoping you could provide a clarification on that position of the article, as I might want to publish accurately your position on the matter at our IDEA website. First of all, I do thank you for something you said in the article in Nature. College professors need to be very aware of how they talk about things such as purpose, chance, cause, and design. You should still be sensitive to the kids in your class. Along those lines, um, could you further clarify your position regarding the following question? Do you oppose the offering of courses on intelligent design and/or creationism in the philosophy and religion departments of secular universities? And her answer is no, they are quite appropriate for such courses. And I can leave it to people that want to dig into this. I'm like, so okay, I get it. You really think we're going to lose this debate once we get up to the university level? But I got it from one of the most chief advocates. It's like, no, we will not put it in public schools, but it's okay to put it in university. I'm like, okay, this is game on. And I think I tried to say, look, professors at the university, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to attract a lot of students if we teach this. Um, And in this 20-year time, they said, well, Sal, we need to have a sample of the product. And I said, that's fair. And in the interview, it's 22 years since this exchange has happened, 21 years. And I'm like, a lot of data has come out where, our arguments were okay, but they're not quite the level we have now. And what I mean by why we're at the level we have now, I could practically origin of life researchers and evolutionary biologists, their latest literature has practically made the case. I don't have to say much. I don't have to quote Michael Behe. I don't have to quote
Right.
John Sanford. I don't have to quote, I might quote James Turk because he's a respected chemist, but I could quote the literature he's citing on experiments. I said, look, this is so easy now. I couldn't have pulled this off as easily to put together a course as easily in 2005. But now, having worked for John Sanford, becoming acquainted with the literature and watching literature literally come out in the last 5 years, I'm just like, look, this is so wide open now. Um, we don't have to reference AIG or Ken Ham. I said, look, I now just confront evolutionary biologists and origin of life proponents. I'm just like, look, this is your own literature, guys.
Yep.
This is peer-reviewed literature all the way up to the National Academy of Sciences and Nature. You're going to have to deal with this. Now, you can bamboozle the public and say this stuff doesn't exist, but I'm not going to let you forget it because this is not good that on the one side you're saying something in the popular press and in these debate forums, etc., and uh, the experts in your field are on my side. They may not like the fact they're on my side, but you're gonna this is what's happened.
I actually have a phrase that I coined, OER, oscillatory evolutionary reasoning. And I've watched like systems biologists, and I write for creation evolution headlines. So I'm constantly in the popular press, and then from the popular press, I go and I get the scientific article. But they're constantly doing this. They're treating things as though they are designed. They're studying them as though they are designed. And then when they report on them, they just invoke evolution. So that saves them from what they're actually doing. They're doing ID, but they're calling it evolution. So it's astounding to watch.
Yep, yep. Um, so in 2005, and I'm not trying to be harsh on my colleagues. It's like, okay, um, because I've kind of dealt in the sewers with the other side in the internet forums, I kind of have a better feel of, okay, this is you had, our side has good arguments, but it's like you need to frame it a little bit differently. When you can frame it with literature from their side, you're going to have an easier time.
Mhm.
And in fact, I have confronted them. I said, you're not even aware of what your side, and these are top tier, and they won't believe me. I'm just like, okay, suit yourself. I'm having fun. I'm more literate in what they should be literate in. And I just like, look, we're going to kill you in this debate because um, I don't have to rest on my credentials, which aren't much, or my knowledge. I said it's your side that's kind of coming apart. And emblematic of this was Brett Weinstein on the Joe Rogan Experience. He said, my colleagues have been lying to themselves. Modern Darwinism is broken. Stephen Meyer, who's an ID proponent, he's a good scientist. I'm just like, okay, guys, I never thought I'd see the day, but it's here. You can continue to ignore this. You're at the point now, guys, you're ignoring your own literature.
Mhm.
This is really bad because you're going to get killed by this. And I could see why you don't want us talking about it. All they can do is say, Sal, you quote mined him. Then I'll say, okay, how about we do this? Why don't you explain in your own words what you think that quotation meant, whether in isolation it holds, does the context change it? And oh, by the way, now that we have AI, why don't I ask some of these questions? What does that quotation mean? And boom, it usually affirms what I said. I'm just like, well, look, dude, I think you're going to have a hard time because you know full well every student, I'm just going to encourage them in a new course. I'm going to say, okay, here's the quote. as an exercise, why don't you just look into this yourself? You can use AI to just start you down your path and see if the way that I quoted him is an accurate representation of that quote in isolation. So that's why I wanted to hear from you. Um, I wanted your thoughts. I think I can help develop this. I don't know how to deploy it. I've gotten resistance of all places from Christian universities. I'm like, okay, if it's not going to be there, I'm going to just put it out there online, make it for free. If colleges want to grant credit, fine. It's going to be out there. It's going to be university level. And I can tell you, deans have seen what I have said. They're using my material in their class. And I could show you some.
You know that for sure.
Huh?
You know that for sure.
Yeah, the dean told me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're going to get I can't imagine that the circumstances under which the secular university system would allow that in because in order for it to come in, somebody's got to put their neck out there, and nobody is willing to put their neck out there. And it's brutal. I mean, it is when you suggest such a thing in secular academic circles, the mere suggestion is enough to get you canceled if you're taking it seriously. What I said earlier about the notion of ridicule being their only defense, it is their defense. It is where they stand. And if you step out of it, you're going to face the ridicule, but who cares about that? What you're really going to face is the cancellation that comes along with it. Just like that woman you were talking about in 2005 who dared to stand outside. And trust me, if you're going to deal with it in a philosophy department, like they suggested, like don't bring it into science. The same thing applies there. Um,
Okay, that's
yeah.
that's disheartening news, but I that's why I said just give me the facts. Kind
I
of
mean,
the
if you're in a philosophy department and you're going to trash it, fine. That's fine. I mean, they'll probably even, get on board with that. But if you're going to like give it a fair shot, you've got an uphill battle. And
okay.
chances are good there's nobody that's going to be willing to stand up to the machine gun fire that will be coming their way.
Okay, so I that does not surprise me because I've had contact with that. So if you can give me some insights into all of this, just so I could understand a little bit, because not even what I'm realizing is I thought I could invoke the profit motive. And I realized, no, that doesn't quite work because that means some guys will be out of their job. They will lose influence and power if another
Yeah.
department within or another set of disciplines emerges that's competing to get students. Because actually, if you have a philosophy department that brings something new that all the students want and they don't want the existing classes, that won't fly. There'll be a there's they'll be economically threatened unless they adapt, which I thought I wanted to run that by you, that this would be threatening to the establishment and the status quo.
The problem with the economic argument is you've got two levels to get through in a university system. The administrators might get on board for the economic benefits that might come from it, but you've got the ideological wing in the professorship, and they are the guards. They're the gatekeepers, and they despise really the bureaucrats in the system.
Okay.
So you've got a two-tier system. For the most part, it's all so far left that you both sides are, but one side is left and wanting money and willing to do anything to get it, right? So they might bend it to it. But the problem is you're never going to get past the gatekeepers who despise those who would like be willing to allow it in. They
See,
and it it's not a conspiracy. It's just not. Everybody just is it's monolithic.
It's
There,
it's kind of it's a structural, as they call it, a systemic problem, you might say.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I say to different people different times that when I was in the university system, um, every professor would come up to me and talk to me about, if they would. I isolated myself for the most part because I didn't fit in. I never fit in anywhere that I went. So that was, but if people would come up to me, any of my colleagues, they just assume you're a leftist like they are, and that you are, totally opposed to, especially ID or creationism of all things. Um, yeah, they just assume it. And I say, why did they assume that? I said, because they could. Because there's just almost nobody in the system that is conservative, that is a Christian. They almost don't exist. And if they do, they have successfully hidden themselves deep within the system, and they're not about to come out of the shell.
Okay, um that doesn't totally surprise me, but I wanted to hear it again from, I mean, these are discussions I haven't really had because I was so focused actually on the science side,
Mhm.
but it's very hard for me to do all this research and then I share it with people that are graduate students. One of them's a PhD student, and as I said, even now people that are professors and CEOs have read some of my stuff and just like, wow, you just have this instinct. I want to share. I just have to find a venue. I got very frustrated with the churches. This
Mhm.
has been also very alarming. Christian seminaries don't want any of
No.
this. So
This is
churches
this is
don't want
this
it.
is
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say this is my frustration since I've made the switch to this. It's like, okay, so the people who are supposed to be our natural allies, even the ones who claim that the Bible is inspired, look at BioLogos. What is their opinion? It is not, let's look at the facts. It's you guys are, they make the same argument. You guys are insane. It's just it's the contempt argument. They refuse to engage with the facts. And if the people who are claiming Christianity, who are even claiming that the Bible is the Word of God, are not willing to find some sort of joy in the fact that maybe, just maybe, the Bible got it right. If you can't get on board there, and what always comes to mind to me, I don't know how familiar are you with C.S. Lewis, but there's that one place in the Silver Chair where Puddleglum is confronting the Green Witch, and he says, ultimately he says, you may be right. Maybe everything you say is right. And I don't even doubt it, but I don't care. I'm going to go and look for Narnia and be as like a Narnian as I can. And I'm going to hold on to Aslan because no matter how you paint it, and I know there's different ways of looking at this thing and you can paint it in a different way, but no matter how you paint this world, the vision that of the Christian worldview licks your world hollow. And there you've got the two positions that I was talking about earlier on that I came to at the point when I had to decide between staying an atheist or coming back to Christ. This world is hollow. It's empty. It's got nothing and it falls apart at every level when you look at it closely. This one holds together, it's consistent, and it gives you value. But there's a price to pay, right? Because now you're responsible. And I don't know how, especially to bring the Christian world onto this, and it's driving Jenny and I crazy. We just don't know how can the churches be the ones that is holding this back?
See, okay, now you have shown me this has reinforced everything I've seen. I'll tell you, and because, okay, I'm going to name names. I'm sorry to have to do that, but it's like some of these parents are sending their kids off to Christian universities. I said, you better be careful because people like Dr. McClure at Lipscomb University, he hates ID. He he's a big funder, he endows a chair, and he gave me and Nathaniel Jeanson a hard time. The hostility was unbelievable toward intelligent design, and it's also by their theologians. And when I appeared, I didn't even talk about intelligent design. I talked about chromatin modifications, technical stuff. But I
Hmm.
mentioned that I worked for John Sanford. They went ballistic. I'm like, okay, so I come to a Christian university and I'm going to talk about, my work on, what the NIH has discovered, how amazing the cell was. But that was it. I mentioned that I worked for this project was funded by John Sanford. Went ballistic. And then after me, Nathaniel Jeanson spoke, and they went ballistic on
Yeah,
him.
I'm sure.
I
Yeah.
was horrified. I said, look, you guys were practically turning red. You're ridiculing us, raising your voice. I hardly said anything that was controversial, and you guys were teeing off on us. And I said, okay, so this is it. This is the hostility in a university that advertises itself as committed to Christ, Lipscomb University, and the theologians there, some of the faculty were tolerating such uncollegial conduct. You could disagree. You didn't have to behave like these uh, internet hecklers. It's
Hmm.
unworthy of professors to behave that way. We traveled a long way to just give a presentation on technical stuff. Nathaniel Jeanson was talking about something in mitochondrial DNA, and it's like, look, even if the guy was wrong, he didn't deserve that treatment. You at least need to, if this were a discussion about transistors, you wouldn't be behaving this way. You said, Professor Jeanson, we think your numbers are incorrect. You don't go ballistic like that. I
Hmm.
was horrified. And then
And that they do tells you something. It's not a matter of the science. It's not a matter. There's something else going on there. There is a touch point. And what what I was going for with that last rant that I just had
well,
was
please.
just that I don't understand. I don't understand if you're a Christian, why, or you claim to be a Christian, what is so threatening about finding information that makes God's word to be actually more trustworthy or something that you can trust at a level that you weren't sure of before? So why is that threatening? I mean, for
I
me,
and I,
when
I
I
don't
came
have an
back
answer,
and
but yeah.
yeah, when I came back, it's like I laughed at myself because I thought, man, this is so fantastic. I can now trust God at a level I couldn't before.
Mhm.
And that's my fault. I should have been trusting God all along. But now that I've learned it, it's like, wow, what an idiot I was. How I shut this down. And it's like I'm so overjoyed to find this information because it allows me to, Lord, help thou my unbelief, right? It's like, okay, now I get it. I appreciate your opening the door and recognizing that I'm not where I should be, and you're giving me the extra information to move me closer to you. That's so exciting, but it's not exciting for them.
No, and
They're
and
not even
I
willing to entertain the possibility of it. I don't
and
get
and I yeah, I have partial answers, but one, I don't know that there is like a one size fits all answer. I've definitely found some answers. So let's go to the churches. I realize they're not really interested in facts. A lot of the leadership is not interested in facts. They're interested in what works to grow the people. Sorry to use a slightly vulgar term. There's a joke here in DC. It's like you want butts and seats, butts and seats. So
it.
you have all these empty seats. You'll do what you can to fill it because that's donations, that's marketing, whatever. Give them a good worship service experience, get a charismatic pastor. That's what counts. And I was in a major lawsuit that uncovered corruption. And I was offering what I was teaching to these churches for free. And they're hiring this guy, David Platt, to preach on the poverty gospel, and he charges ten to $20,000 to preach the poverty gospel. And And this came out in, we filed a lawsuit. By the way, this was an equitable lawsuit. There was no chance we were going to get one dime. We knew when we paid like close to $250,000 in legal fees, we were not going to recover this. But we stood on principle. We said, we want the books open, and their lawyers fought us. I said, look, your Constitution says you're going to allow an audit. What's the deal, guys? We did get to find out there were contracts that were illegally signed. And now this is all documented out on the internet. Uh, so this happened. The documentary came out, I believe, in November 2024. My lawsuit was filed 2022, and all the discovery that came out of it, we didn't even get as much as we wanted, but it was very disturbing. In that once that door creaked open, I'm just like, oh my goodness, we began to look at all the other legal records, and people started coming forward and say, we're seeing a similar financial scam here. And now it's starting to all come out. I'm like, I recently heard, okay, to give an idea to the audience, the scale of the frauds that are going on, if not in the legal sense, definitely in the ethical sense. You could look this up on Wikipedia. 500 million. That is, yeah, billion, as in B, big. Was A case was settled. 8 people were convicted. Several of them went to jail. Over $500 million fraud. In today's dollars, that's easily $1 billion fraud in the Southern Baptist Convention affiliate. Look at the Arizona Baptist Foundation. Arizona Baptist Foundation. I realized this is like an entertainment business. It's not about the facts. They're looking for charismatic pastors who will attract people, and actually a fact-based ministry is threatening to that business model. Because and I learned this the hard way. And I said, so this is all about theater. You're bilking the congregation of money, you're signing illegal contracts. This is not just in our local church, McLean Bible. We began to see this business model play out in so many other churches. And there are court cases that were started to arise after our court case came out. And then I started to find out, oh, it's not just that. They're all ongoing court cases where, like, the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, Johnny Hunt, former president, is making 500,000 a year as president of Southern Baptist Convention. He got involved in a lawsuit where he was accused of sexual harassment. He countersued. And so there are depositions. So the woman said he harassed me. And he said, no, I didn't harass her. She volunteered. I pulled her pants. I'm sorry to go into detail. So she accuses him of pulling her pants down. And he said, well, it was consensual. So he confessed he pulled her pants down. Whether it was forced or not, she's a married woman. They're married to each other, to other partners, obviously. I said, so you confessed to cheating on your wife this way, and you're the president of the Southern Baptist Convention talking about Jesus, making $500,000 talking about Jesus and how important the gospel is. And all of this probably came out long after he'd been president of the Southern Baptist Convention. I said, oh, now you're only confessing it because a lawsuit came up and you were deposed. And now all this dirty laundry comes out. And I'm seeing this pattern go everywhere. And it's been sickening to see. So part of the answer is they're really not that committed to facts. They don't reverence the facts. It's the theater. And I said, gee, where have I heard that model talking about actors and hypocrites before?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting too, because for me, there's no way of nailing down prophetic times, and I don't know. There's a lot of things going on right now. Whatever. I don't get too involved in prophetic
Likewise.
things. But the cycles repeat, and I think the church has come full cycle to like where Judah was in the, right before the Babylonian the takeover and the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. It's like we've cycled back, and it scares me actually. It's like this is awful. Um, and I don't understand it. Like I just said, I don't understand how the church can be this far off track that they can't even find some joy in the fact that science that has opposed Christianity for the last 150 years is falling apart. It's like
And
why would you
why?
choose this time of all times to get on board the sinking ship?
Exactly. So I think there's a spirit in play. And as I was going through this lawsuit, I said, God, this is such a beautiful, prospering church. Why'd you let it go to pot? And then there's Acts 20. Paul said, after my departure. So Paul may have helped found the church of Ephesus. I've tried to look this up, and it's like, well, he was definitely involved. They knew him. Whether he's the actual founder, I couldn't nail that down, but I would presume he was very, very senior at least. And I would say we could make a good case he was at least a co-founder of the church. And in Acts 20, he's talking to the elders of Ephesus, and he says, God has revealed to me after my departure, savage wolves will come upon you and not spare the flock. I'm like, Lord, this is kind of a hard pill to swallow. So you're going to make this apostle, he's going to help plant this church, and then you're going to tell him God's going to just deliberately let savage wolves come in. But I was prepared for that because some years earlier before all this happened, Deuteronomy chapter 13, verses 1 through 3, God says, okay, after you're in the promised land, if a prophet or dreamer of dreams arises among you and says, let us go follow after God, other gods, you shall not listen to that prophet or dreamer of dreams. And God even says, even if he works signs among you, and God says, you shall not follow that prophet or dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to see whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. And I'm like, oh, now it starts to make sense. Because, the creation evolution controversy, up until I read that verse, so this was like 2015, and I was on board with ID, but that nagging problem of the problem of evil. I said, God, you made this beautiful paradise. You have your children there, Adam and Eve. Why did you let that snake go in? If that snake never even went in there, there'd be no problems. Why would you build this paradise and throw a snake in there? And I read Deuteronomy 13. For the Lord your God is testing you to see whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. And I'm like, wow, that explains a lot. He's going to let these bad actors come into the church. And just like he let the bad prophets come into the land of Israel after they entered the promised land. And I'm just like, okay, it kind of sucks that it happens this way because we had such plans, this beautiful paradise of a church, and I'm just going to let it go to pot. And just like, okay, that's the Lord's plan. It's painful, and this is played out. And this is how I've been able to, reconcile what's going on. It's not what I want,
Mhm.
but it has, it's comforting to know that this is the pattern God has decided for us. And if you at least know the hand you're going to be dealt, it's a little easier to deal with it.
Yep. Well, and yeah, the Bible gives us these patterns, and it's over and over and over again that God set forth the people. He sends Abraham out, tells Abraham to go to the land, and then Abraham makes a mistake and listens to his wife. Does this sound familiar to, the Garden of Eden? Listens to his wife, has a child with her maidservant, and that child from that point, and there's almost no moral commentary on it in the Bible, but that child and their progeny has troubled Israel ever since.
Ever
It's
since.
like all of this is a result of us failing to follow God's word. That's it. Do what he says. If you do what he says, then you're avoiding all of the consequences that will come. But if you don't, You're going to face all of those false prophets. You're going to face because you let them in.
Yeah.
You invited them in because you didn't do what I told you to do. And I'm not telling you to do something that is not for your benefit. I'm telling you what to do for your benefit. And if you choose to do what's not for your benefit, then you've earned what you get. And I
And
think we are exactly in that same position as the Hebrews were over and over and over again in the Old Testament.
well, so you've given me kind of what the news I expected, which is sad, but I didn't realize it was quite as bad. I was hoping it would not be as bad as you said. But when you describe the systemic, it's like you would have the greedy bureaucrats who would probably be halfway on board. It's like, hey, it's money, we'll take it. But then you have I didn't realize that that totally makes sense. You actually have the other tier, which is the professors who have to actually administer it. So even if I made the sales pitch, that you'll make money, I began to realize, it would upset the apple cart because it could actually displace like who in leadership would be uh, who would be in leadership in the religion and philosophy departments. Now, at George Mason University, when I graduated there, I never would have thought I would have seen what had happened there. When I go now to the religion department, there's what few Christians were there aren't there anymore. They are dominated by Muslim professors teaching Islam.
Yeah.
And while I bring this up, if oh, before I there's another slide I wanted to show you. I just this is only going to take maybe 30 seconds. Um, tie up a loose end. Um, how I knew that a dean is sharing my stuff. I was I think I was asked permission if you could send my slides or that word got to me because I was in private meetings. We have these private Zoom meetings all across. We have professors across the nation. And this here is the amino acid sequence of collagen. And so you use English alphabetic letters to represent amino acids. And so in this case, the collagen has about 1,500 amino acids. And you could just, if you just string, that string is like 1,500 amino acids long. And if you use wraparound, it'll look like something like this. I took the liberty to highlight all the G amino acids, which are glycines.
All right.
This is a noticeable pattern. So this ended up, the dean said he's also the dean of students. He also teaches biology, and he wanted to share this with his class. He said, yeah, this is pretty good. And then, so that's a collagen protein, human collagen A1. And this is a human zinc finger protein. I should use green next time for these colors, maybe. So zinc finger also is about 500 amino acids long. And I took the liberty to highlight the C amino acids, which are cysteine, and the H amino acids. Now, the zinc ion actually connects here. The reason the spacing has to be so exact is the protein won't function unless you have the exact. Same for the collagen. And when I looked at this, I said, there's no way you have a common ancestor for these proteins. Um, and I said, I began to see this in my bioinformatic work. And so I started asking evolutionary biologists, I said, so you do argue common ancestry for all life? They said, yeah, that's so clear. We're all descended from common ancestor. I said, well, I'm seeing these proteins that don't have a common ancestor. Do you agree? They said, yeah, these don't have a common ancestor. I'm just like, okay, I get it.
That's
You
an
don't have,
orphan?
huh?
That's an orphan?
Yes. The proper term is taxonomically restricted, meaning you will see collagens in metazoans. Not, orphan applies to a single species. Taxonomically restricted goes to a group.
Okay.
So there are taxonomically, I'm just like, where did these come from? You don't have macroevolution without, I mean, collagen is important. You won't have skin or bones without collagen. So you're not going to go from a single cellular species to one that's like that needs skin and bones like mammals do, unless you have collagen. And I said, look, this is not a gradualistic change. You have no other ancestors of this, and you can't take a random string and make a collagen, I mean, or a zinc finger, and it doesn't gradually, especially the zinc fingers do not gradually work because the zinc
See,
finger,
the zinc finger, is that the CTCF proteins?
CTCF protein is one class of zinc finger, yes.
Okay.
And what they call multivalent. It can do multiple addresses. It's like a zip code.
Hmm.
There's some zinc fingers that are like a specific location. Not only is it a zip code, but it's like the house address, the street, and the house. So
Okay.
you have some that are just general area like CTCF, but that can also be tuned. And then you have some that are actual house address. It's not just a zip code. Um, that's not a really great explanation. That's the closest analogy off the cuff.
I put you
And
on the spot.
yeah, creationist. I had a creationist intern, and I said, "Hey, Katie, how do you see that this won't evolve in gradual steps?" She said, "Yeah, I see that because when you manufacture parts in the cell, you have a place just like in society, man-made world, you have factories that are specialized in making parts. But then you have to have a transportation system that will deliver the parts to the right location. This totally makes sense in terms of engineering economy. You don't necessarily have the factory right there where you're making the part. You want to deliver it. Just think about all the parts in the cell. You have to manufacture in one location and then deliver it to another location. How do you need an addressing system? The zinc finger is one such addressing system.
Gotcha.
And I'm just like, I mean, how many amino acids do you have to get right to get this to work? I've argued with evolutionary biologists. I said, look, this is not like two or three. You need, look at this one. This has 13 zinc fingers. So each row has a zinc ion connected to it. And in between here, in this region here, that's how the address is synthesized.
Mm.
And I'm like, look, I can't tell you exactly how many have to be exactly that. But let's say it's only 10%. That's still a lot. That's enough to make evolution not work. You mess up that critical 10%, far more ways to break than to make. This is like trying to solve a random password. And what's really bad is if it's life critical, you only get one shot.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't have iterations. And I said, this is definitely true topoisomerase, which I happen to publish in through Oxford University Press. I said, you get that localization signal that uses a different addressing scheme. You get it wrong once, you're dead. I mean, and I've confronted evolutionists with this. They say, oh, I don't know. But evolution's so true. I'm just like, okay, I keep hearing that, but you actually never show when you're confronted with actual real problems of evolution, you just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, they don't have to. It's
So,
not
so
their
anyway,
problem.
I'm sorry I had to, that became a lot. I said it's only giving me 30 seconds, but
No,
uh,
that was very interesting for me. Hopefully it was to everybody else too.
well, I wanted to show what the dean's, this dean was very kind. He said, that was really good. And I said, look, this is knowledge that's out there. I just added colors to make it easier to see. And because this astonished me. I said, there's no common ancestor. And so he started showing it in his class. By the way, we were not at this stage 30 years ago. We couldn't
I
make these
know.
arguments. They're so easy now when the other side's acknowledging it. And I was like, okay, so how come there are not many papers on this? I could see why. This is kind of an embarrassment. So we were then going back to, we were talking about how the church is not interested in facts. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that for all churches. Obviously, we first met up there in Pennsylvania, and there are at least some church people, but we were hosted like in a warehouse or something when we met, not in a church.
Yeah. No, no, not in a church. Nope.
Um,
And in fact, since then, Jenny and I have reached out to 25 different churches in our area, Bible churches, and tried to get some of the pastors to respond just to some simple questions that we're hoping maybe we could, get a feel for how their congregations are dealing with these issues. We had one person respond out of that 25, and it was a pastor that we had gone to their church some years ago. That's it. Nobody. Nobody
Yep.
responded at all. And it was so disheartening. It's like
I'm
they're shutting their eyes to it, or they're scared of it, or or they're just like you said, they're not interested because it doesn't put butts in seats. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss with it. It's like I don't understand
yeah.
the mindset of someone who isn't interested in knowing that God's word has been validated over and over and over again, not just in science, but in archaeology. I mean, there's so many things we can talk about, and they're not interested.
Yes. Okay, so you're validating exactly my experience, the lack of enthusiasm. And as I have thought about it, and I want to be careful not to generalize, but I could see some things that apply in specific circumstances. First off, they just don't, they're in the mode, it's like it's all about my skill and ability to build the church. I've seen this where like they feel threatened by someone that could actually, they view it as undermining their authority and power and influence. I totally have seen that. Um, they view us as competition. There's also a demographic that they appeal to where the demographic they appeal to is like you could tell them anything if you're just charismatic enough and they'll follow you. That's control, that's power, that's reassurance, that's job security in their viewpoint. Someone with skepticism and critical thinking, I've actually talked to other people. It's like to them, it's not worth their time. They don't want to invest someone who might be an aspiring science student, uh, who might have hard questions. They'd rather get the easy sheep that they can just lead by the nose. I know that's so harsh, but that's what I'm seeing. It's like they're not excited by facts. It's like I can almost tell you if you tell them how they can get more influence and power, that'll really motivate them. I've talked to church planners. They said there are three things that I've seen of power and prestige. Power and prestige. I'm like, okay, this is kind of disappointing, but then you've seen all the scandals of the televangelists and all. It's like, okay, this is playing out at a smaller scale.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm like, okay, it was very sobering to see that when I saw all the televangelist scandals and how one people could be bamboozled, and then that also people could be so insanely dishonest that they fully well didn't believe what they were preaching, but would still preach it anyway if it would bring in the money. I couldn't live with myself. Uh, but there are really a lot of people like that. And then I've talked to one ex-pastor recently. He said, "Oh yeah, I lost the faith. I had to leave the pastorship because you know, my conscience bothered me." And I said, "Good on you. You're the first one that I really respect you for that." I mean, I'm sad that he lost his faith, but I said, you're being at least authentic to your beliefs. And he said, "Yeah, but I know lots of pastors and seminarians, seminary professors who've lost their faith. They confess it to me, but hey, they're going to lose their job. So they just keep right on." I shouldn't laugh, but that's the truth. And then yeah, whitewash tombs.
Yeah, whitewashed tombs. Yeah, exactly. Again, the Bible always gets it right. If we trust it, it always gets the right parallels. Um, so um, here's something that bothered me back when I was still an atheist about the church, and has bothered me more since we got back. It seems like the church is going into almost a I just finished a series on the Christian atheist called Malachi. The Malachi we did it's like 20 episodes on the book of Malachi, and it took me to studying the Hebrews and what their idolatry looked like. And I always, for most of my life, thought of the Hebrew idolatry as being, worshiping Baal, worshiping a foreign god. and abandoning God. But that's not at all what it is in the Old Testament. It was always like they're worshiping Yahweh, but they're bringing in other things. It's like
Mhm.
Yahweh plus. Even at the base of Horeb, Mount Sinai, um, Moses comes down and they're worshiping. But what did Joshua say right before that? Tomorrow will be a feast to Yahweh. And they said, here are the gods who brought you out of Egypt, the cow, the golden calf. But the golden calf was representing Yahweh. And so they're always, and that's what they did throughout all of their history. They added things to the worship of Yahweh rather than, and God said, no, that's not worshiping me. And so I tend to think that what we're doing today is adding things in. We're a celebrity culture. And so we think of Paul Tripp and we study Paul Tripp's books. Well, who cares about Paul Tripp? I care about the Bible. What does the Bible say? And so we're always moving to, the next greatest pastor or the next greatest book and there's nothing wrong with those things in themselves. But when they start becoming, part of the religious, part of the worship of the Lord, then we're off base. And I
Mhm.
think that's what we've done. I think we've added so many things in. Um,
Yeah.
I'm rambling here now, but
No.
this is where I go crazy with what's going on in the church today.
Well, there's some things that are subtle, and it's like, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But like I said, from my own personal experience, when I saw a pastor charging ten to $20,000 to preach the poverty gospel,
Yeah, the irony is too thick to cut.
like, yeah, okay, and you're living in $1 million home in a very exclusive neighborhood, and just like, look, so your whole shtick was, why don't you just live poorly? I said, there are plenty of slums in the area if you wanted to. You could, and it's like, I mean, the irony was not lost on a lot of us, but these guys are so confident, and sadly they are right, that there's a segment of the population they can totally bamboozle, and they just don't care because. And this is really this is human nature. People, once you fall in love with someone, even when you get all the facts, you just can't believe they're that rotten. Okay, I'll give you a personal experience. Uh, Being in the aerospace and industry and dreaming of traveling in space, helping Werner von Braun. He was like a hero. Then you find out he was a Nazi and he did some really unsavory things, and it's like, I really don't want to believe that. It's just too painful
Mhm.
because he fueled so many of my dreams and made me wonder at stuff. And you just do not want to think of someone who's your hero to have had some really dark sides to him. And I, I think God helped me experience that. And he said, look, Sal, even you that would be appalled with his prior life, even you who now know the facts, isn't it pretty hard for you to kind of come out and call him out on it because he inspired so many of your dreams. You looked at him as a hero. He helped the Americans land man on the moon, and I
Mhm.
could understand why. There you have pictures of him with the president of the United States.
Mhm.
And then you go back in the files, you see him in pictures with Adolf Hitler, and just like, okay, I could see how you heard the whole history how they scrubbed a lot of these ex-Nazis. They just kind of cleaned the record up. Suddenly, they're heroes of the American space program,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I bought into that too. And it's like, well, if we're going to be fair with the history, and I said, okay, so this is human nature. People want to believe that when they've heard this charismatic pastor that gives them some feeling that they're living for something, and then you find out it's rotten. There's a part of you that's just going to dismiss it,
Mhm.
and that's what we're dealing with in the culture. But I think the thing that's sobering, I thought these were isolated cases. I didn't realize how pervasive it was, that it's spreading to the seminaries, it's spreading to all the
The
mission
Bible colleges.
organizations. Yeah, I heard a very disturbing report. You look at the qualifications they have in the New Testament for what an elder and pastor should be. the North American Mission, and this is out in public, okay? They are interviewing a pastor and also a you know Jonathan Harris, John Harris. He he was he's a Christian that is researches all these things. He's not a pastor, but he's on church staff somewhere. And he went to one of these meetings by the North American Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention. That's how they plant churches. They look for prospective new leaders. And he said, I couldn't believe the criteria that they use to pick who they're going to fund. They wanted to classify them in terms of how they interacted with people and their charisma and their ability to market. And he was really bothered. He said, "What about all this other criteria?" And he was deeply bothered by that. I said, "But that's their model. That's their business model. It's like this is how you get butts and seats.
Mm.
You'll attract a certain following." And then I looked. I mean, I've looked at some of the estimated numbers of how big religion is in the United States. It's a $90 billion industry. And you look where some of these mega churches are and where their theology is, it's like, oh, these are personality cults. Um, some of the frauds have been called out, like Peter Popoff. He was called out by an atheist. Are you familiar with Peter Popoff?
I remember the name. That was some years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay. So for the viewer's benefit, what had happened, atheist Randy, James Randi,
James Randi. Yeah.
was trying to find out, how did this guy, he said, oh, there's someone in the audience here. They're wrestling with this,
Yeah.
this disease. And I'm going to tell you that God's going to heal you. And your name is Ellen. And you have this daughter and she has this disease. And of course, the audience is just like, "Cat dude." He said, like, yes, he knew her. God spoke to him. And James Randi was like, okay, I'm going to find out how he's figuring this out. Turns out that he would have people fill out prayer cards. And as he had he had
Hmm. Yeah, I
earpiece.
do remember this. Yep.
Yeah, and his wife was reading to him, and he would just say, "Ah, yes, there's someone in the audience named Ellen." Of course, the wife is just telegraphing all of this, and this is the condition. And then he said, "You're going to be healed. God has told me." And so people were believing this, and even long after this fraud had been uncovered, it's out in the net. He's starting off the same thing, same modus operandi. People flock to him. Doesn't matter that it's even out in the public sphere. And similar for Jim Baker, he was in prison for fraud.
Yeah, I remember. I remember watching that.
Yeah, after 5 years out of jail, he starts another business. Money's flowing in. And I'm like, okay, this is the church model. And it was prophesied. So I guess it's really sobering. You and I are kind of in the same place. It kind of just, it can be demoralizing that people are not really eager for the truth, even in Christian circles.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what kills me. It's like, why aren't you the two things right there? Why aren't you excited that the evidence points now to the truth of God's word? That should, even if it proves you were wrong, so what? It's like, yes, I can trust God more with that. Not that we shouldn't have been trusting him all along, but that there it is. And we should be able to use that and get excited. And then the other one is, now I lost my train of thought. I'm going to have to go soon because I have to go to the bathroom so badly.
Well, I thank you for holding on. I tell you what, I can pause. Hang on, I can pause the recording. Let me just let me pause the recording. There's a way to do this. All right, so I wouldn't say that we've necessarily solved the problems we're trying to solve, but we're comparing notes, but we're encountering the same problem.
Yep.
Um, I don't know how. Look, this was still valuable that we're able to share this, and then I don't feel like I'm so out on a limb that secular universities don't want ID. Christian universities, many of them don't want ID. Churches and seminaries don't want ID, not at the level we want to teach. Um, there is maybe one silver lining is some of these institutions are falling apart. And at a very practical level, also personal level, some of these young men contact me, and I expect, you know, uh, as I do outreach, they're going to be more contacting me. And I'm just like, they may ask, well, what church should I go to? I'm just like, I'm having a hard time telling you because what I'm seeing, it's like, I don't know that. Okay, I don't mean to sound harsh here, but consider those 24 churches that did they even write back and say thank you or,
Nope. Not an acknowledgement, nothing.
all right, okay, notwithstanding, it could have been an administrative thing or whatever, but that cold shoulder has also been when I've been very forward to the pastor, saw him in person, and they're complaining that the youth are leaving the church, and it's like I could help you. They'll say, I'll get back to you. We just
Yeah.
want to preach more on. The solution is they need to hear more of my preaching. Just invite them to hear me preach. And my viewpoint is like, I'm not sending people that I help lead to the Lord or encourage. I'm not sending them to your church because your attitude is, they need more of your preaching. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard some of your preaching. You're going to destroy this poor kid's faith.
I wish I wish I could get the pastors. I mean, if they're serious about what they're doing, I wish I could get them in a room as a former atheist and a professor and give them some idea of what goes on in a university classroom and the broader university setting. Because you're sending your kids to, I mean, I used this analogy before, but you're landing them on Normandy Beach and they're facing withering gunfire and they're not going to survive because you've not given them anything to hold on to.
Yep.
When the evolutionary worldview, and I'm not just talking the theory of evolution, I'm talking about the evolutionary worldview, the long ages, all of it is a package that has had 170 years to put together the most incredibly complex and detailed logical structure that fits together and makes so much sense unless you know where to pull the strings. It'll all fall apart, but you've got to know where to pull. And your professors are not going to give it to you because they're all completely invested
Mhm.
in it. And they're going to set out to destroy. I've actually, as an atheist professor at East Stroudsburg University, I was on staff teaching intro to philosophy, and they brought on a new adjunct professor. And this guy, the students came to me and they said, the first day of class, he said, if any of you are Christians, he said, I'm going to tear your faith apart by the end of this class. And as an atheist professor, I'm thinking of philosophy. I'm thinking, this guy's a monster. Get him out of here. Philosophy isn't about shutting things down, it's about opening things up. And I was horrified by this. Not that it
Even when
helped.
you're an atheist, yeah.
When I
Wow.
was an atheist, yeah, because that's not what academia is supposed to be about. But that's all it's about today.
You see,
I
this is
don't. I always tell, don't send your kids to university. Don't do it.
so this is what you see, you have that ethic. We call that due process. Due process. It's like, they may end up being an atheist, but there's a certain way to do it ethically if you're teaching something. And I could get why you know, how that would bother you even as an atheist. Also, similarly, as a Christian, I also think there's due process in helping, you know, minds that are undecided, how to get them from A to B. I said brainwashing is not, I have ethical problems with that, but a lot of
Mhm.
churches use brainwashing and socialization. I'm just like, okay, this really does bother me. Um, you don't have to if you have the facts on your side and people are interested in the facts. And and so I'm not sure that we necessarily, okay, I think there's a saying, the first step in getting better is acknowledging you have a problem or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
I think we've acknowledged the problem that we are dealing with. The first step in getting a cure is acknowledging you have a problem. So, I mean, secular universities, churches, seminaries, Christian colleges. I'm just like, Lord, you've dealt I feel like we're Gideon or, you know, we're really outnumbered now, God.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Well,
I could,
I do take comfort in when Elisha, I think it's Elisha, not Elijah, comes out of the city and he sees the army all around him, and his servant says, we've got no chance." And Elijah said, "Well, open his eyes, Lord, and see that greater are those who are on our side than on their side." And that's true, but that doesn't help me at this moment try to figure out exactly how I'm supposed to respond to this. Because I'd like to try to help solve the problem.
yeah.
I mean, we've committed our lives to it, but I don't know. I don't have any
So
good
no, no,
answers.
this is why it's so good to have a conversation with you. We know, we know if we're given the chance, put it this way, we unfortunately know that even when Jesus worked miracles, rather than the Pharisees welcoming the evidence of God, they were
Mhm,
actually really offended.
mhm,
And that's why I was saying, yeah, I'm seeing the parallels here. Uh, we see kind of the clergy class now that the evidence of God, of Jesus Christ, actually is starting to arrive from quarters you wouldn't expect. They're
mhm.
actually offended. They're getting displaced.
Yeah,
And
and
I'm
they're
like,
abandoning ship at the time when it's like it's uh, the secular this it's sinking, and you're getting on their board, you're getting on their
on
ship
board,
instead of
yeah, yeah. And at the
defending
very
the
least,
faith.
you're being unhelpful.
Yeah,
And so, okay, I'll tell you why this is also still a very good conversation for me. I re okay, I'm sorry to have to halfway name names, but I'm going to call these guys out. I was in a discussion about how to help the youth in the church recently, and I said this is kind of, you know, I told them I said, look at some of the young guys that I helped. They're now university professors and CEOs who've retained their Christian faith, and it's because they're in the sciences. And I said, I think I could help. You know, the demographic in the church is the average age is 70 or over. There are no young people there. None. Gone. And I said, we can reach out to like some of the college students. I can help with that ministry. And I was just trying to explain. I couldn't even get half a word out. The pastor interrupts and said, well, what you're talking about, what you focus on is fringe and tangential to the mission of this church. That moment I said, okay, God, I think you've told me, don't waste your time here.
yeah.
This is the attitude of the pastor. I said, I'm giving this for free. I was offering to sacrifice time. I'm just like, look, if I reach out to people, the young people, I'm not going to recommend this church. I'm not going to recommend this pastor.
Mhm.
You will not get fed. And this is painful to finally say that for the last 15 years, I was always concerned when someone's not going in church. Now I'm actually getting to the point I'm getting concerned because there's so many bad churches. I'm actually concerned if they are going to one. It's like, well, the
I know
track
what you're
record
saying.
of, yeah, you feel the same way?
I do. I do. Yeah, we left a church some time ago. It's actually a pretty good church, but we haven't found one since.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I just and I don't know. I don't know where to go.
Okay.
I
So, in fact, I'll have to, some of the ones that I trust, I have to drive a little far. They're a little bit more friendly. And if not the pastor, there are at least pockets of elders and teachers there that like Sal, come here. We want to hear whatever you say, whatever you say. And that
That's
I've
fantastic.
had some good experience, but they're few and far between enough that I would be concerned that it's like, well, what church you go to? It's like, yeah, I'm kind of, do they have a program that talks about facts? and evidence is, and if I hear like no, I'm just like, I don't know. I might ask why. And
We're
this
moving
is,
towards more of a house church type
yeah.
viewpoint.
Oh, me too. Me too. Have you heard of Tom Wadsworth?
No,
I'm going to send it to you. He's a New Testament scholar. House church was the New Testament model. So
right.
they had no cathedrals, they had no sermons, and they had no worship services. He actually
Yeah,
analyzed this. He said, well, and I looked at it, I said, let me try to be fair. I said, we've modeled a lot of Christianity around the churches that were sort of like the Old Testament temples, where you did have like 200, some over 200 singers. It's like you had a big production. You definitely did. And I'm just like, I think that's still a fair expression of Christianity, but you can't make it an essential. Where there are two or more gathered together is enough.
yeah.
So,
That's
and
what
I
we're
could see
doing.
what,
We're going and we're going and we're reading scripture. That's it. That's the whole thing. We go, we fellowship, we read scripture. And that's the whole thing. And
yeah.
I'll tell you, I get more out of the daily study of the Bible with my wife than I ever got out of any church I've been to.
Well,
Now there are some sermons, there are some that are outstanding and I look back in history in my life, but the daily Bible study that I have with my wife is the most enriching thing I've ever had in my entire Christian life.
and when I send you the link to Tom's Wadsworth, that he will echo exactly what you said because he was a pastor, and he said some of the best things I ever learned is from my congregants when we were just having a Bible study.
Yeah,
And he's the pastor. He said, you know, this whole thing about sermons, he said that's not actually even the New Testament model.
yeah.
Um, and I'm really, if I may offer something that sounds terribly cynical, but I've gotten you become cynical after you've seen enough and you begin to figure it out. It's like, oh, there is a vested interest for seminaries to promote the importance of a pastor who's paid a lot of money
Yeah.
to make sermons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how this could be very perpetuating. And I'm sorry to offend any of the professional pastors out there. Now I talked to some of them that become ex-pastors who are still Christians. They said, "Yeah, I was fed up with the whole business. I'm still a Christian, but uh,
And
it
to be
didn't."
fair, there are pastors out there who are committed, and the pastor that called us back, or sorry, emailed me back, is a fantastic pastor. Um, so I'm not trying to rip everything apart. I just say my experience has been not very encouraging.
But likewise. So I think you're right to say let's not paint a totally broad brush and overgeneralize. But I am saying the proportion is so disturbingly high that I never thought I'd be at the day where I would almost say I'm happy that these people that come to me and say they're Christians now and they're not attending church. I'm just like, thank God. I mean, that sounds mean, but I'm just like,
Yeah, I know.
being a professional gambler at one time, or at least that level, it's like, yeah, the odds are not good that you're getting taught well. So, uh, I think we need, I think I would be blessed to further the conversation. We could brainstorm what to do next because I think both you and I are like, well, look, we have a lot of stuff we want to share, and there are a lot of forces that are fighting us.
Mhm.
I'll tell you this, they're eager to hear us. They're people eager to hear us, but they're forces that are ensuring that we're not connected to them.
That's exactly. I think you nailed it right there. I think the general people would be open and excited as they begin to hear, especially, sorry, as they begin to hear the message, they would actually respond like Puddleglum did, like, yes, 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 there's evidence. I can see it. And they would get excited, but the gatekeepers are keeping the gates shut.
Well, this is a little bit of a painful topic. The one person who was able to bypass all of the barriers was Charlie Kirk. And he had his direct marketing. He didn't have the universities on his side. He articulated exactly what we're saying. He was actually even more harsh. He said he had some choice words for the seminaries and pastors. I,
I didn't follow him in life, really, or even in death, but I've heard so many good things that yeah, I'm glad he was there.
because I could see the young flocking to them because he would say things. The thing that impressed me, first of all, he was never confrontational. He tried to be as factual and calm. So even when someone said something totally stupid, he wouldn't ridicule them. And he said, well, you know, here are the facts. He talking to convoys, very caring. And he'd be just on the university campuses, just talking to people. And that dialogue was being overheard. So even if the person he was interacting with was not converted, there were people that were listening. It's like Charlie Kirk's right. And I'm like he totally bypassed the seminaries, the churches, and the university institutions, except for the fact that he was at the university, but kind of out in the open in between, like on the campus.
Mhm.
And it was amazing that the YouTube videos he made from that. I watched some of his interactions. People were actually watching, replaying it because it was such a good dialogue. He would finally answer some of these tough questions. And I'm just like, wow. See, the internet has changed everything, by the way.
Mhm.
The word got out, it became viral.
Mhm.
And however one falls on the political spectrum, one cannot deny um, it's widely acknowledged that his campus work in Pennsylvania flipped the electoral college because that was the battleground state. He had enough influence that changed the outcome of the presidential election, and that's
Wow.
just one person. And so I think um, I could tell you from 22 years of experience in hitting the same brick walls you're finding now.
Well,
Um,
I've had what, 2 years? Why should anybody listen to me? I've only been it's 2024, right around this time that I made the flip to YEC. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted with what I'm finding. I would have expected the Christian churches would have been embracing it, and it's just not there.
and
It's
it's even worse.
astonishing to me.
It's even worse than that. The old Earth creationists. Okay, so, by the way, I love old Earth creationists. A lot of them have said, "Hey, Sal, look, I just don't believe the facts. I
Mhm.
think I'll go for these other interpretations. But
That's where I was.
if you give me the facts, I'm on your side." And it's like, look, I think your heart's in the right place. If you're undecided, that's fine. Now, for those who've been watching my channel, case in point, Allah top evolutionist, professor of population genetics, award-winning mathematician. He's tops in his field. And I only found out, and he's my co-author on a publication I had with John Sanford. The time we were writing the publication, he said, I'm undecided. I didn't realize that just a few years later, he came out. He said, I'm a young earth creationist. I used to believe God used evolution. So there are a lot of people that are kind of on that path. I'm not going to, pounce on them. I just sense there's some people you just give them the gentle touch. If
Yeah.
you see that they're sincere, they'll come around. They'll come around.
Yep.
God will reach them. That's not the case with theistic evolutionists. They'll fight you just like the biologos people. They are not
Yeah.
open-minded. They're most, oh my goodness, even when you feed them facts, no, they won't even become an old earth creationist or even an ID proponent like Michael Behe, who believes in common descent. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm horrified because some of the stuff they say is not even factual. Not even in
Yeah.
their own literature, I could say it's not factual.
All you
So,
have to do is mention biologos, and
oh
I,
boy.
I can't. They're what typifying everything that I'm complaining about today in this
Okay.
conversation. They're
Oh,
they're the they're the tip of the not the tip of the iceberg. They're like the foundation on which everything is rest. It's like you people. I mean, there's something seriously.
There's
I'm
a way.
almost going there. I'm not going to go there, but it's almost, yeah. All right.
There's a
It's
spirit. There's a
evil.
spirit there that I feel. I can feel it. Okay, I'm just take it for what it's worth. There's something that just my spirit gets very troubled
Hmm.
when I interact. In fact, when I've even seen some of their pictures, and I don't know why I got that. I didn't even know who they were. I got just a really scary. I'm just like I felt this darkness.
Hmm.
It was a
You're not
scary.
alone.
Yeah, it was a scary darkness. So in the Bible, it says, "Not by power, not by might, but by my spirit," says the Lord. Um, I think if we're going to follow the way it worked in the past, and biblical history has a way of sometimes repeating itself, it's not going to be through a large funding through like the seminaries or through the power of the universities and the money. I tried to go through the money angle or the churches or the seminaries. It's going to be by God's Spirit. We just have to find a way to be put in touch with the people. And if that means I have to go on campuses and talk, even if it's impromptu, I knew when I think I know it's been
We'll
two
join
hours.
you.
I'm sorry.
We'll join you. I
This
have no problem speaking on a campus.
this has been going on 2.5 hours, and I to honor your time because I know you have to grade papers, and I don't want to keep you from your students. Um, we'll bring us to a close, but I hope this isn't the last time we talk like this. This has
Shouldn't
been
be.
so good. Um, okay, when I was using my own efforts, and God knows that my heart was in the right place, I spent hours either putting up flyers back in I don't know how they advertise events anymore, but in the day you would put up flyers on the campus. I remember putting up flyers and no one would show up. 4 hours spent, no one, zero. Did that at George Mason, zero. Did that at James Madison, zero. And then by God's grace, one of the students heard of me. We were just at lunch. He said, "I'll advertise." This auditorium was packed out. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, so everything I did didn't bring the people in. Everything you did, Lord, packed out the auditorium.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm like, okay, so um, well, just like when I prayed, God, give me national attention. I, nothing of that was on had anything to do with my work. I got it because it was an answer to prayer, and He used mechanisms that had not practically nothing that I did involved. I just had to be ready, and I think um, if for nothing else, trying to develop this university level college class. If I am out there on campus and you get hostile professors, oh my goodness, in 2005, before I really understood, before I barely knew anything, had no biology training. They had the entire Virginia atheist come out in full force. They packed out the auditorium. They were so hostile. And they were throwing stuff at me, humiliating me. And I didn't fare well because I was unprepared. And some of them were PhD students of a prominent, one of the most famous evolutionary biologists. They were mad. They were so mad. If this happened again, I would be ready because I could quote, if his PhD students show up, I'll say, look, didn't Michael Lynch say this? Yeah, I understand he was the guy that, you studied under. So why don't you tell me what he means by this quote? I'll have them now.
Hmm.
I couldn't have done that in 2005, but they'll be had. If the faculty comes out, I know exactly how to challenge them. I mean, this is why God has trained me for 21 years to do this. And the college course, I'm designing it to equip people like you where um, it's not just me. You can help me develop this because in the military, we often build equipment like I was more familiar with airplanes. It's like, okay, that one didn't fare so well in battle. How would we make the next model? and nothing like feedback from what do you call it? Field testing. Field
Mhm.
testing. It's like, okay, why don't we try this and let's field test it? And so, just a historical anecdote, the Japanese Zero in World War II was just dominant. It had a kill ratio of, I don't know, I'm making this, it's in the ballpark of like at least 5-1 against American aircraft. So they came back with reports and they started to analyze the problem. They said, our field testing, we didn't fare so well. By the Battle of Midway, we improved our tactics. We were kind of at parity. And they said, okay, let's build this new airplane. I still remember it's the F-6F Hellcat. The F-6F Hellcat with a Pratt& and Whitney R2800 double wasp engine. And for a car mechanic, I'm sure you just love the fact that I can name even car airplane parts.
No, don't give me that much credit as a car mechanic.
But this is an airplane engine. But I just
Yeah,
remembered it's a famous airplane engine. I mean, just like the car junkies, that's just such a great V8 engine, that model or whatever. Well, there was one for the aircraft. And so they equipped it with this Pratt& and Whitney R2800 double wasp engine with all sorts of superchargers. It ended up having a 19-1 kill ratio because they were able to take field testing.
yeah,
And I field tested some of my ideas, but we're going to have a chance to field test this. And if we can condense it into an internet course, we could multiply this. We'll just say, look, these are the websites. If you're uncomfortable with all the facts, you can at least direct your listeners to the website to get all the facts straight. But here's the script. This is a very easy script to read. I'm writing a booklet that's only 20 pages long, and you can use that as a principle to argue for at least old Earth creationism and an ID. Young Earth is considerably harder, but I think this can open the door because once you get through that door, just like what happened to my boss John Sanford and Ola Hosser, once you get them to believe in intelligent design, they're on their way. It's
exactly. Well, you follow the logic. It's like I said before. I followed the logic of atheisms to its obvious end, and I knew it was bankrupt, but I couldn't make the switch. When I finally made the switch, I followed the logic, and I ended up in young Earth creationism. So
praise God. So before we close, then we'll talk a little bit backstage. And thank you. I'd like to, before the audience here, publicly thank Dr. Wise, John,
yeah. Thank
for
you,
being
Sal.
here. And maybe I think if you'd like to have another, I would beg you for another chance to have a show. We can start to go and I could say, hey, John, what do you think about this as a presentation on a campus, either impromptu or whatever? We can have the elevator pitch version, a 10-minute version, half hour, and then, full hour back and forth. Um, I think if an idea is really good, it can be expressed very succinctly, and we could practice that. And I might have a chance to test this out on the George Mason campus.
Mhm.
And if some of my detractors and haters are hearing about this, well, that's great because it's better to be criticized than ignored.
Yep.
And so if there are any hostile professors out there that want to debate me on the campus, this is going to be fun.
Mhm.
And we could think of a lot of places where we could bring this. And actually it's funny, the students would be the most eager to watch debates.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The people the people in power would probably not like this. So I think if we can get some students interested in helping it, because that's what happened when I packed out these auditoriums. It was the students. The faculty didn't sponsor of
Yeah.
course, I was so naive then. It's like, oh, I was pretty naive to think they would help sponsor it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'll give you any closing thoughts. I really should give you the
I
last.
appreciate the opportunity to talk. I mean, you contacted me early on before I knew who you were, and then I saw you, or we talked briefly across. Who was the biologist who was speaking on Logos RA.
Joe
Um,
DeWeese?
yeah, Joe DeWeese, that's it. And that was that. I think that was more our first sort of face-to-face conflict. I mean, contact. But it wasn't. I mean, I didn't see you, you didn't see me, but we were back and forth a little bit. But I think you contacted me first based on my website or something. I don't remember how we first contacted, but it's been a fascinating step-by-step journey ever since until October when we saw each other at the
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw
ISBR.
you. Yeah, I was first very, very flattered. I mean, the way that I remember it, and was that you showed up on one of my shows. I was just like, that's that's Dr. Wise. That's the one with that tremendous story of his conversion. And when I was crying, I mean, I started to tear up when you're retelling your story about, how your first wife's passing, and then Jenny. I just started to cry. I was breaking down in tears. You see, I'm starting to tear up even now as I recall it. And then I saw you on my channel and I was like, he visited me. Oh my. And then
I'm a nobody, Sal.
that was such a powerful story. I was so, I mean, to me, you weren't a nobody. I said, God had touched his life. This is a miracle. I
Well,
want to,
that's true. God has, and anything good that came out of it is all him because I was gone. I was gone. I mean, there was nothing left. I said I see no path back to Christ, none. And then God, step by step, brought each little thing that I needed to bring me
if
back.
I may ask, were there people praying for you? Was your
Oh
first
my
wife,
goodness, yeah.
your first
My whole
wife was
family.
praying
I
for
mean,
you?
I devastated my mother. She was a strong Christian all of my life. And when I walked away, it was just devastating. So yeah, I think my whole family probably was, but my
Praise
mother
God.
in particular.
Wow. Wow. See, so the prayers were answered.
Mhm.
God was people were praying for me too. I don't know that I would have walked out quite like you, but if God weren't helping me, I don't know where I'd be, honest.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, so we were just reflecting how we met each other, and finally, um, I know how come I wanted to contact you. I was getting closer and closer to actually starting to codify stuff because I've been throwing stuff up on the net just to see how people react. And this year in particular, because so much has come out, even in evolutionary textbooks, they're like, did an ID proponent write that? I'm like, this is gonna be so easy now. I mean, I'm just like, I mean, there's a biologist, evolutionary biologist by the name of Dr. Dan, and I think he's really irritated at me because even 5 years ago he gave me a good fight on debate, but I'm just like, I don't know you'd fare so well today because I don't have to quote any of my ideas. I have to quote people who are way more senior than you or evolutionary biologists. They're going to disagree with you. So, I mean, it's so easy now. And it's because of that, I'm now trying to realize this dream of making a college level course. But even if it's not deployed on the colleges, I still have to make it. You have helped me solve what the role of this is. And it's going to be available for free on the internet. And I don't know, we're going to take it. But ideally, enough students are going to start to clamor for it and say, if we're going to study this, we ought to get at least college credit for it. If no one wants to teach it, at least give us credit. And I'll create a certification process or something.
Very
Well,
good. Well, thanks
well,
for inviting me on.
um, could you close this in a brief prayer for all our audience? I'd appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Yes, thank you for asking. Holy God, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your word that gives us truth. For as our Lord Jesus said, your word is truth. And we thank you for this time that Sal and I have had a chance to share together. We pray for all who are listening that you would fill their hearts, fill their soul with the joy and the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ and the Word of God, and that filling will encourage them to reach out and serve you with their whole body, mind, soul, and strength. Father, we need this so much right now because our world is so dark, and you are the light that brings light into the world. We know where the secular world is taking us. They're taking us into darkness. And if the light that is in them is darkness, how dark it is. Save us, Lord, as a culture, as people, as a church. Bring us back to you, and may our hearts and minds and souls be entirely yours. You bought us, and we owe everything to you. Take us, use us, and conform us to your image. Thank you for Sal and all that he's done for so long. And thank you, Lord, for each and every moment you give us to serve you. May we maximize the value of that service in everything we do. In the name of our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen in Jesus' name.